Hello students, and this will be the second part of today's class, and what we're going to be doing is trying to compare and contrast brooder houses amongst chickens. So it's basically going to start off our poultry. Our poultry are coming this week, and specifically what I have for your guys' notes is a Google Doc that says starting off poultry, and it has blanks, and these bullets or these blanks are what we're going to try to get to identify today. So you have these blanks, and with these blanks I also have a second Google Doc that has then some bullets. These bullets then will be what matches into there. They might go in order, they might not go in order. You just have to kind of fit them into your notes. And what I am going to do is go through a specific one that has all of the bullets filled in. So, to get us started then, you should have a student starting off poultry and a word list starting off poultry opened up, and you can watch this video as we go along. So what we have here is the first term of poultry. Poultry is where birds, basically any bird domesticated by people to, I don't like man, let's change that to people. For production of meat, eggs, oil, or hide. And so what we're trying to do is raise birds for a purpose, just like we talked about at the beginning of the year. Specifically, one type that we're going to be dealing with are called broilers. These are certain types of chicken. Poultry do not mean that they only have to be chickens. They could be ducks, geese, turkeys, chickens. You could have ostrich. There's something called emus. All of these have been domesticated, and I'm sure there's other birds that have been domesticated also that are more of our pets or exotics ones, but those are the ones that come to my mind with livestock. But we are going to be dealing specifically with broilers. Broilers are mostly raised in southeastern United States, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, first, second, third. They are a pivotal place because of their climate, and then also just that's what they've raised down in that area, and they're very good at it. Pullets. Pullets are young female broilers. Cockerels are young male broilers. I don't know what that's for. I don't know why I have it sitting there. Why do I have it identify common poultry? Oh, I know why. Because then you're going to go out and you're going to see those different ones. I see. I don't need that on there any longer. Let's get rid of that. Then in Nebraska ranks number 28th in broiler production. Egg rankings, though, on the other side, where you might have one in there, I surprise you or not if I bought any, that raised for eggs. Iowa, Ohio, Indiana is first, second, and third. And we start to get into that Midwest, and Nebraska actually ranks 10th in egg rankings. We are number 1 in processed egg products, and right here in Norfolk, we have Hennessy Foods, which is only 2 blocks away from the high school, and them and Michael Foods, which is in Wakefield, Nebraska, are the big companies for egg products. And so Nebraska, though number 10 in rankings, we're number 1 in processed eggs. We have a lot of companies here that take our eggs and turn them into basically products. They aren't sold as eggs, they're sold as processed products and put into cake batters and other processed foods that can have eggs that have already been cooked, basically. All of these broilers and eggs, or layers, as they're called, layers, I should probably put that up there, let's call those layers, are vertically integrated. Basically means that everything is owned by one company. There are no middle steps. The butcher, which would be a processor, which in this case up here would have been Michael's Foods, they owned the company that processes it. They owned the birds that lay the eggs. They own the eggs. They own everything in between in the whole process. Another example of this would be the broilers, like Tyson. Tyson owns the chickens. They own the processors, they own the chicks, they own the layers that are laying the chicks to turn into broilers, they own everything. So that's called vertically integrated. These vertically integrated places, and all chicken places, including our own, usually raise birds indoors. They basically want to keep the bird at a temperature constant so that we don't have any extremes, which then make the birds have to work harder to produce whatever they're supposed to produce. Plus, it keeps the birds and the litter dry, which then lowers disease and also starts to help with what we'll find out is called ventilation. It allows for us to control the lighting so you don't have to worry about the sunlight, and then it also allows us to maximize the room. We only need a half a square foot per broiler according to the USDA. So legally, you only need a half a square foot. That's not very big. That's half of a tile on your guys' floors that you look down at. Or with a layer, you only need 1.5 tiles or 1.5 square feet per chicken in a cage for a layer. So you're packing those chickens in very tightly. The brooder itself refers to the early period of growth when heat must be provided. Hopefully I get a tool in that's going to help us with some infrared heat to do it, but if not, we're going to be using a heat lamp to give our little chicks a little help. We then will try to pat around so they don't get smashed into corners, so we usually use a ring of some sort that basically circles the young chicks so that there isn't a direct corner. And then we also try to move around the outside so that you get drafts eliminated, and you also then don't have chicks trying to get away from the food. You want them to learn how to eat and drink immediately, and so you basically put up a brooder ring to force them to eat and then also protect them a little from drafts. Once they get going, we're going to change temperatures. And what I mean by that is when they start off, we want them to be 95 degrees or so, and that makes them so that they kind of like underneath the mother's wings those first few days. The temperature then usually drops about 5 degrees every week until you get down to about 70 to 75, which is room temperature. The chicks, if they're crowded together, it basically means that they're chirping, they're too cold. The too cold temperatures make them so that they start to smother each other, and then they start to poop on each other, and then they spread disease even quicker, and then they get sick and they don't produce. If they're spread way too far apart and they're panting, this makes them so that they don't eat as much, they slow down their growing, and they're spending too much energy panting, trying to cool themselves. So you got to hit that temperature range that we want to be getting to of that 95 and then slowly dropping it down. All these first few days, we're going to be a little bit different because we're going to try to keep them bundled together, and they're also not as big, so it isn't quite, we're going to have enough room basically. But we are worried about ventilation because the ventilation basically removes the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide that is being released and starts to remove ammonia and other fumes that basically unless you change the bedding every 5 minutes, is going to start to form. So you want to get rid of that. And this ventilation then allows the birds to grow properly, and it gets rid of that ammonia smell. It makes it so that not only do we keep our room smelling clean, it also keeps the birds so they can do their cellular respiration. We are going to be raising them in a cage. You could also be raising them on the floor. Though no broilers are really raised in cages, basically due to they get what's called breast blisters, and they can get some wing damage when you pull them out and some leg damage when you pull them out of the cages. We're going to, just because we're going to have them in a small area, but most of the time you're going to be on a floor raising. There are some that they're trying to make it so the broilers are raised in cages because it's more efficient. With cages, you have fewer parasites, you have less litter costs because you don't have the pans that you guys did. The droppings just fall straight to the ground, and then you can really start to stack them up higher, and you don't have the wasted space above the chickens. You have stacked up cages. And it's kind of like what our layers are raised in. Past the brooder, we start raising them into multi-level cages. So you're stacked to the ceiling in cages. You then have 5 birds in a cage. If those 5 get sick, you can remove that cage and maybe get them away from all the other ones. It also then, easier to figure out which ones are producing, because then you can regulate how many eggs are being released from this cage. You can computerize everything. People do start to move into what's called cage-free, which is a movement that some of our places are trying to get into, and it's where you're raising them not in a cage, but they have room to the outside. This is where layers are basically being moved into, because our broilers are already in this range. It's not quite as efficient. And then even topping that inefficiency off is when we go to organic. Another ideal, or trying to get it so that the chickens are raised more in a freedom kind of raise and not in so much of a conventional raise, you can raise them in organic. And organic basically means you can't use certain antibiotics. They can make it not only out of a cage, but also they can see the outdoor. And then something called molting that we'll get back, the layers can get to. All of these items also start to help out with what's called cannibalism. Now, not these 2 items, but when we start to get up here with this way back to here, where are we at? 1 square foot per bird, you start to worry about these are too close to each other, and they get bored, and they start hitting on each other and pecking on each other. We try to reduce that by using red light. We can not quite as dense as that minimum, and then we make sure that we're feeding them totally correct, and then we can even break their beaks. Basically, you put them into a little chopper like a fingernail clipper and you break their beaks off. We don't really have to worry about that because we're going to have enough space in our cages, and we're also going to have the right amount of feed into that range. And we're going to maybe use red lighting. Maybe you guys will do that as a variable. But we're going to be hitting those things up, so we won't have to worry about cannibalism. We are raising what are called a hybrid. We talked at the beginning of the year. This is what one of our goals with our animal science is to try to get the most production out of everything we can get. And we will be raising a hybrid called a Cornish rock. It was developed in the 1900s, and it's a cross between a Cornish and a Plymouth Rock, an attempt to basically get more breast meat, which is the highly demanded meat or cut of meat on a bird. With that, there we go. We are going to be worried about a disease right off the bat called coccidiosis in our brooder. It's caused by a protozoa. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in cage-free, organic, or on a not in a cage, or you are in a cage, you are going to get your birds to get coccidiosis. Basically, they get tired, and then they start to get diarrhea, the chunkiness on the back end of them. We can prevent it. There are vaccines to try to stop coccidiosis for a while, to give it some immune response, giving it full of electrolytes and vitamin C in its water. And then you can also feed them an amprolium that we've already talked about in class. That is a medicated chicken feed that Lindsay pointed out was on the label of one of our bags, and it is a anti-protozoa that can help stop coccidiosis in our chickens. And basically, that was the last thing I had on our intro. I went pretty quick. You should be able to go back and forth between the bullets to copy and paste them into your notes. And what our objective here today was to compare and contrast brooder houses, or those first houses that our chickens are being raised in, and we identified terms that dealt with, well, what type of chickens are being raised in those brooder houses, how much space they need, your ventilation and temperature, and then some side points about how some things are raised in cages, some things aren't, the movements of cage-free and organic, and then the specific birds we are going to raise.